Hello and welcome to the Morningstar series, Ask the Expert. I'm Emma Wall and I'm joined today by Morningstar Investment Management's Cyrique Bourbon to talk about the French election. Hello, Cyrique.
Morning, Emma.
So the French election is in two parts, and we've had part one where two frontrunners have emerged, which will go head-to-head next month in the second round of the elections. And they're two people that perhaps you would assume were the outsiders, because what we have in essence here is a French election with neither of the two major parties.
Exactly. I think that is the kind of main message. First is that the traditional parties, the left and the right, are not represented. So this is interesting from the perspective of the view the French people have taken for the future. Obviously, Marine Le Pen was generally expected to be of the final two, given the kind of populism movement and the rise we've seen from this type of movements in the last couple of years globally, but also importantly in France. Emmanuel Macron, very interesting to see him come as first. Clearly, which is good from a political perspective, I think the French have taken the view that the traditional way of looking at politics, left, right, you probably need to go beyond that. And Emmanuel Macron, his message was clearly to try and harness the best of both in this campaign. And the French seem to be willing to give him this mandate, or at least he's clearly in the lead. He
is in the lead, and he will be the youngest French president since Napoleon, I read this morning. He doesn't have a political background, unlike Marine Le Pen, who has controversial politics, but comes from a family of politicians. What do those two things mean for the French people?
I mean, I think I would caveat slightly. I mean, Emmanuel Macron, he doesn't come from the traditional, say, political family, but he does have a similar background in terms of his studies. He's been well trained. Obviously, he's very young. He's risen through the ranks very, very quickly, so he's clearly very clever and has got very strong views and very, very interesting ways of being accepted and of presenting himself. So I think it's very refreshing as well for French politics to have a kind of younger candidate who's got strong views, who seems very dynamic and very positive generally.
Let's boil it down. This is sort of a beginner's guide to French politics. Le Pen is basically the Trump of France, is that fair? Anti-EU, anti-immigration. And Macron is much more left-wing, much more pro-Europe. Is that fair?
I think on Le Pen, that's definitely fair. She's clearly anti-Europe, anti-Euro, anti-European Union. And she basically wants to close the borders in light of what's been happening, especially in the last few years. Macron, I'd say, is still quite, he's economically a bit more closer to the right, and socially, in terms of values, probably more close to the left. So I think it's kind of a good blend. That should work quite well for French politics in the future.
And Macron is the leader so far, but we have learned over the last couple of years not to trust the polls. We've seen that in the US and indeed in the UK over Brexit. We've also seen a right-wing politician be very positive for markets in the US. You know, Le Pen may be a divisive character, but if she follows the policies and has the same effect on markets that Trump has in the US, it could actually be a positive thing for stocks. What are the likely outcomes in terms of investment, both for economics and indeed stock markets, of these two results?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see it a little bit this morning. We've got about 4% rally in French equities, broadly speaking European equities, but banks up about 9-10% in a couple of hours. I personally thought the kind of outcome of Macron-Le Pen was broadly priced in, but it clearly seems it kind of wasn't. So it'd be interesting to see what happens next. I think the outcome from a Le Pen win in 2 weeks' time is most likely to be negative. If you start kind of do the maths after the scores last night, you still get to probably about 40% for Marine Le Pen, probably a best-case scenario. I think the kind of unity of the French people against the kind of extremism that she represents will probably prevail. That's what's happened before. Of course, a lot of people say with Trump, you never know, but I think it's quite different. I think the type of moves you require for Le Pen to win in 2 weeks' time are way, way, way higher than you saw with Trump winning last year in the States. So kind of unlikely in my view. So from a market perspective, yes, it would be negative if Le Pen were to win. For Macron, it's broadly positive, but I thought most of it was priced in. Clearly wasn't quite. And just, I mean, my personal view on investments does remain very long-term. So, I mean, we don't anticipate any short-term moves based on the outcome of political events. And worth reminding people and investors that political elections and obviously political mandates are by nature short term. They are finite, so they are in the case of France, it's 5 years. And that does mean that for investors with long-term time horizons, 5 years on a scale of 20 to 30 years, actually not that much.
Cyrique, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
This is Emma Wool from Morningstar. Thank you for watching.